Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Bold Badass Business Owners. And today I've got a super bold, badass business owner for you. By the way, you all know me, Dr. Barnsley Brown. And I want to welcome to the show the amazing, the jovial, the jocund, Jim Schulman, who is a lousy manager extraordinaire. Welcome, Jim.
Barnsley, thank you so much for the invitation. Greatly appreciate it. And I live up to all of those monikers.
You absolutely do. And you know what? Jim has a show, you all, that you do not want to miss. It's called Fuck Ups, a celebration. It's for business owners to share all their F ups. I've been on the show, we all have them. And it's quite fun, but there's also the lessons that we glean through these F ups. So Jim has that amazing show. Be sure to check it out. I'm sure he'll tell you where it is. Where is it, Jim? Let me just ask you, where is
It's
it?
on RVN television. RVN television. And if you type in your search bar F asterisk F asterisk CK asterisk PS dash a celebration, you'll get it. We had to put asterisks for the U's just to get it through search engines, but type that in, and there are guests ranging from age 23 to 73, and the fuck ups range from mild to I don't believe what I just heard.
Yeah, I remember when I was on there, I had like door number one, door number two, and door number three. So, it's always good to have to know we're not alone, really,
Mhm.
in that, because when we're in business, there's no buffer zone, right? There just isn't. And we've just got to handle whatever happens in our business and be responsible for it. So just so y'all know, Jim loves working with successful entrepreneurs who are like the Tasmanian devil in that they are super busy. They are wanting to succeed on every level. They work super hard. And something that's interesting about Jim is he says that most people who fit this kind of client avatar have gone through some experience of trauma in their life, and that experience of trauma motivates them to really become people who excel. So tell us just for a second before we get into our topic, Jim, tell us more about that work and what you found with people who've been through trauma.
Well, Dr. Barnsley, what it's really about is that as your adult personality is forming during your teen years into early 20s, the experiences you have are crucial to where you go forward in life. So
Mm,
I have found more often than not when I've worked with people over the years that something awful happened in that time. Dad died, family lost all their money, sister
mm,
became paralyzed. And when you go through something horrendous where your whole world and your sense of security has been turned upside down,
mm,
typically you'll go in one of two directions. You will do anything and everything to be successful so you never have to be that vulnerable again.
mm.
Give up. There are a lot of people who I've worked with who are very successful, who have siblings who are 43 years old doing 420 behind the back door of Dress Barn where they've been a clerk for 10 years. Or worse, that somebody would have been in that situation and they wound up filleting a Ruger. It can be that severe. But the people I work with are the survivors. If you ever saw the movie Gone with the Wind, and the famous line that Scarlett O'Hara said is, God is my witness, I'll never go hungry again. Well, she was
Yeah.
about 17 years old in that point in the narrative. And her
Mm.
entire world of wealth and comfort was
Yep.
completely upended. Now, she did a lot of questionable things after that point, but she never went hungry again.
Mhm.
That's what I'm talking about.
Love that. And it just reminds me, I'm watching The Walking Dead right now. And I'll tell you, that's the thing, is like that will to survive, the will to survive that is in that series, and people have to do some pretty amazing things to survive. Yeah, I love that. And of course, we love Scarlett, don't we? We do love us some Scarlett. So I love that you recognize that these folks, those of us who've been through a lot, and probably that's every human being has had some sort of big trauma, but some are bigger than others, right?
Mhm.
Those of us who've had that experience, there's this part of us that also wants to compensate, right? To compensate for whatever maybe we were told that was erroneous, or a way that we were treated that we didn't feel we were respected or listened to. We want to be listened to, right?
We want to survive. We want to survive as well as we can. And entrepreneurs are the ones who figure out what tools they need to do it. An entrepreneur creates what I call the vortex of activity, where
Mhm.
everything and anything is something to be approached to see, can it produce revenue? Can I be successful with it? Will enough precipitate out? The joke that I have with many of the people I work with is when you begin, a client has two requirements. They have to have a purse and a pulse. And sometimes the pulse is optional.
That's pretty funny. All right. Well, that would be like, I don't know what, business necrophilia. I don't know, right? A purse and a pulse. That's good.
Mhm,
Yeah, when you start out. But as you keep going, you keep refining who you really want to work with, and you keep refining who you don't want to work with.
mhm.
So that being said, why is it that entrepreneurs make lousy, awful, crappy, shitty, as you and I talked about, managers? Jim, what do you see? What is it about us that makes us really poor managers?
It is a completely and totally different way of thinking.
Mm,
Okay. There are two types of people that I have witnessed over the years. There are folks like you and I who eat what we kill. Whatever we live on is what we've been able to sell. And
yep,
there are people who get a
yep,
check every 2 weeks who are
yep.
W 2s. And both groups are extremely important, but both groups are almost in some ways diametrically opposed. What motivates somebody who is a W 2 very often is security. What
Mhm.
motivates somebody who is eat what you kill is survival and, frankly, looking for chaos. What's the next thing? What am I missing? What is the opportunity that's down the pike? Why are there? I spoke to a person the other day who said, I have 12 legal size pages, single spaced, of all the great businesses I've thought of that I'd like to do. And I recognized it was safest to put them on the list rather than try them.
Right. And a lot of entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs, They start out with one thing, and then a year later they're into something else, and a year later it's something else.
Mhm,
And that's poor management of self, I would say, for example. So we can not only be poor managers of others, but we
mhm.
can also be really poor managers of ourselves in that respect. We need to find that lane that is going to give us something to hunt and kill, as you
Mhm.
say, and live off of. We need to find that lane that is part of our passion and will lead us to profit and purpose. But we also need to stay in that lane, right, as much
Well,
as we
we
can.
need, and that goes back to survival. We need to stay in the lane in order to eat and to live. But
Mhm.
also, what I've seen with entrepreneurs is they are only happy and satisfied when they can keep looking at what's new, what's next, what can I add to this? And the question is how to balance those two so you satisfy your soul of always searching
Right.
versus I have to have enough stability so that it could produce revenue or more revenue. And so I have a tagline on my business that's entrepreneurship is a chronic condition. It cannot be cured, but it can be treated successfully.
That's hilarious. I love that, Jim. Yeah, we're the people who have vision. We're the people who can see something that isn't in existence yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're the people who look for the gaps. in what already exists. We look for what's not being offered that needs to be offered. We're the people who go in and say, you know, we need we need to do a membership site here at this dry cleaners and not just have it be a storefront. We're the people who see the we see what other people don't see, right?
Mhm.
And we're not part of the herd. We're really not herd people. We don't have that herd mentality that Nietzsche talked about.
And the answer is no. And the reason is we don't play well with others because we have seen that that can be detrimental to lethal. In other words, from our experience, by shutting up and doing what you're supposed to do, you
Mm-hmm.
see people who got trampled on, and you've
Mm-hmm.
decided this is not going to be me. So, a survivor, somebody who wants to thrive, ain't never going to think that way. And the joke that I've had with entrepreneurs is once you've been an entrepreneur, you will never be hired again because you know better.
Mm. And you will never be hireable, really.
You're absolutely right. That's where I was going. You won't be hireable because you're not interested in listening to somebody telling you what to do.
Exactly, right? Yeah, I mean, yes, seriously. And so many people start their business, Jim, saying, oh, I want to start my own business because I want freedom and I want more time and I want this and I want that. Well, let me just say something, y'all. All right. When you start your own business, it's not like you have this yellow pass to joyride. You don't. You're going to be working hard. You're probably going to be working 7 days a week. Right, Jim, at the beginning?
What do you mean at the beginning? I know people who were five
Yeah, there are
years
people who
into
work
it,
all the time now too. Yeah.
which will segue into what we were talking about
Yeah.
with managers. In other words, an entrepreneur will literally throw themselves at the job and they'll do anything necessary to not only survive but thrive.
We do whatever it takes.
Now, here's the problem with that: we need help after our businesses grow to a certain point. So, who do we hire? We
Yeah.
hire employees, and an employee thinks very differently from an entrepreneur. Uh, the way I've described it with most of the entrepreneurs I've known, they have acquired a staff, they haven't
Mhm.
hired a staff. And what
Mm,
I mean by that, and I'm sure you've seen similar situations, is an entrepreneur is having a drink at a bar and is talking to this nice person next to them. And the nice person says in the course of the conversation, my company just went out of business last week. The
mm,
entrepreneur says, my business is getting pretty busy. You want to show up Monday? I'll give you a job.
mm.
That's the HR department for most people I have seen who are entrepreneurs. The problem is after they have acquired the staff, they wonder why isn't it functional? And one of the reasons it isn't functional is the entrepreneur is not interested in managing. The entrepreneur is interested in growing and bringing in new ideas. It's a completely different skill set.
Mm.
So as a result, the staff is there trying to figure out how do we make this work because, you know, Tasmanian devil and everybody, and more often than not, rolls their eyes about Tasmanian devil is off doing X and Y and Z. And
Yeah.
then they'll come in and say, why isn't all of this done? Or this isn't done the way I wanted it to be done. But that's not the type of personality to teach people how they want it to be done. Sometimes they can make a list of it, sometimes they can get involved in pieces of it, but it winds up being incredibly reactive to individual stimuli where the boss's uh, thoughts are at any given second. So that's what I mean by the world's lousiest managers. Now, here's the
Yeah.
flip side: they're also the most generous people I have ever met
Mhm.
because they don't want other people to go through what they had to go through.
Ooh,
They would
yes.
want these are the people who will willingly say, if you want additional training, go get it. If you get an A or a B, I'm paying for the class. If you
Mm,
want to study something else, that's great. If you think we need to bring in piece of equipment X that's going to be more productive, if we can afford it, we'll do it. And they're very often, or, you've worked so hard, here's $3,000, go to Disney World for the
Mhm.
weekend. And then they wonder why people don't take them up on their generosity, or why there isn't significant thanks for the killer super vacation. And the
Mm,
answer is that very often employees don't know how to respond to that. They don't think
yeah.
in the same terms. And the entrepreneur very often will feel hurt about it, but you just gave something. And I'll give you an example. I have a very good friend who gave me a gift certificate to something very expensive, but it is an experience that I probably will never go to, or if I do, it's going to be under, unusual circumstances in the future. It was really nice. I appreciated it, but there was a significant disconnect from what that person thought versus where my head is at.
Mm,
And employees sometimes will just say nothing rather than anything. They won't respond, which is the safest thing to do in many cases.
mm. Yeah, you're making me think a lot of things as you're talking. One thing I was thinking about is there's sort of this employee sense of entitlement, right? Part of the employee mentality that I do this and I get this. I do this, I get this. And those of us who are in business, we know it's not always that inverse relationship. We can do something and it backfires, right? And we get
Mhm.
nothing out of it. And then sometimes we do nothing and it brings us a lot of clients. But there's that sense of entitlement, which may be one of those reasons why those folks don't think about thanking you for what you've given them when you're working for them. But we're usually, as entrepreneurs, we're usually quick starts. We are, in the sense that we make decisions. If we're going to be successful, we've got to make decisions pretty quickly. Would you agree, Jim?
The answer is we have to make some decisions very quickly. We make a lot of decisions very quickly that aren't necessarily ones that should be
Should
made
be made
quickly.
quickly.
And then if
Yeah.
I'm an employee, basically my analogy is running after the entrepreneur with a peach basket, catching everything that flies off. I'm now responding to each stimuli from that entrepreneur. Where is thing X? Why hasn't Y been done? I
Mhm.
just got a great idea about Z. Why haven't you jumped on it and done this? And the employee doesn't think that way. So they're constantly running out, putting out fires, wondering what's going to happen next. In many cases, you'll hear people just have this exasperated sigh, like, what are they going to be doing tomorrow? Or when they come in the office, what's the hurricane going to be like?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes, is very different. Being a self-starter, taking the initiative, taking responsibility, being responsible, ownership in the
Mhm.
company. That's something that's very, I think, very, can be very challenging to create in employees, that sense of ownership that the owner has, that the entrepreneur has. You know, I've always said that, for example, with my speaking business, and I'm hiring a VA right now, and there's a lot of training that will go into that VA, some of which I'm doing, but other is being done by a company that is preparing them for me. But I think about, as I have them go out and ask about speaking engagements for me, for instance, part of me is like, no one can ever do that the way I can. No one can ever do it as well as I can. Right?
Because if they could, that means, am I going to be rendered obsolete? Am
Mm,
I redundant if they can't do it as well as I can? Because I have to protect myself at all costs. So
mm,
there is a flip to that side. The other flip that's concerning is, why won't this employee take ownership of this? Because they don't understand.
yeah.
I recently wrote a newsletter article about why employers are frustrated that it's hard to recruit and retain employees. They have problems related to these things. I got them fantastic benefits. Why aren't they responding? I'm paying X amount. And the question might be, have you asked somebody what they're really looking for? as opposed to projecting yourself on the situation and then being disappointed. That is a skill set, by the way, that is more attuned to a really great manager than an entrepreneur.
Mm,
And what I have found to be successful in many cases is to get a person in there, and the term I use is a kiwi. A
mhm.
kiwi is a bird that does everything a bird can do, but it can't fly. In this case, it can do all the things or think or understand how an entrepreneur thinks and acts, but that person is not a salesperson. That person is not a
Mm,
starter of something.
yeah.
Okay, they're not flying. They can translate the crazy vortex of activity from the entrepreneur to other W-2s and almost act as a Rosetta Stone or an
Mhm.
insulator,
Yeah.
okay, so that it goes smoothly, and they know how to deal with it. And that's usually an extremely important person within an organization.
Right. And it's got to be the person who is, for example, I know that my entrepreneurial style is very quick start. I need somebody who's going to go fill in all the details. So
Hmm.
I'll tell them, here's what we're doing and here's where we're going. And they've got to be able to fill in the middle. So I've learned, for instance, to be a better manager, Jim, I have to have systems manuals, right? I need my standard
Hmm.
operating procedures for things that are done regularly. And it could be a video that I do because I don't like writing it out. So it may be a video that I do for them. This is what I'm doing with for my VA to prepare them for some of this. But like you say, it's got to be someone who can understand our language, but maybe they're just not a great salesperson, but they're an awesome communicator, right?
Hmm. Or maybe, for instance, you mentioned you have to create the structure for the VA. And you also mentioned that you communicate best if you made a video and explained it. What if you had the VA make the video of you and the VA was the one who had to transcribe it and turn it into the manual?
Hmm.
That might be a way for them to own it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great idea. Yeah, and it's so easy to do with Zoom and, Loom and all of these other ways
Hmm.
that we can do that. So let me ask you this, because I'm sure that some people are on here saying, yeah, they're thinking, yeah, I've been guilty of hiring somebody too fast. I've been guilty of just meeting somebody and being like, yeah, I can give you a job, and not thinking about training them, not delegating. And by delegating, I mean really training them. That's a process. Delegation is a process. So I'm sure people are thinking, yeah, I've done that, been there, done that, and I got burned. Um, so how can we, as entrepreneurs, how can we be better managers of others and ourselves? But let's start maybe with others. How can we be better managers of others?
Mm, I'm going to begin with another question. Do
Okay.
we even want to?
Mm,
There's a huge difference between have to and want to.
mm-hmm.
And how many times have we heard somebody saying, I have to lose 50 pounds? My doctor says I have to lose 50 pounds. Well, that's a huge difference from I am losing 50 pounds because I have a structure in place of what I eat and how much exercise I have. It may be that the answer is, do I need to bring somebody in who can translate me and then create the structure for the
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure to happen? Because it depends a lot on where the head is of the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen owners become incredibly frustrated because they're never going to write that manual. They're never going to be able to sit down and do X, Y, or Z. They're going to say that they're available, but they may be available in a way that the employee doesn't get.
Yep.
So I am a firm believer in how do we deal with somebody based on who they are rather than what we want them to be.
Mm.
And I say this because we don't have a lot of time as entrepreneurs.
Yep. Very true. And I have people who are like, yeah, I want my seven-figure business, blah, 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 blah. Well, truthfully, from what I see a lot of people who are seven-figure business owners, Jim, They have such a big organization that when you talk about what they're actually netting in their business, it's way less. It's, maybe a few 100,000, but they have this 7-figure organization. Well, one thing I'm really clear, your point is well taken, your question is well taken. I don't really want to manage people. That's
Mm-hmm.
not why I do what I do. I do it so because of the content, because of the knowledge, because of the coaching and mentorship. And there will be an element of that in having people work for us. There is an element of that, but that's not where I want my focus.
No, and if you have to keep going back to make tweaks and to run that, as most entrepreneurs, it might drive you up the freaking wall. And the faster
Yes.
you get somebody who can deal with that and can translate Dr. Barnsley into action, the faster you're going to make more money and be a lot more relieved so you can do the things you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, right. And it really is about knowing what you're not good at and
Hmm.
what you don't enjoy doing, which are usually one and the same, and not being in denial about it. And also not giving yourself the guilt trip of, I've got to learn this. How many times have we heard someone say, oh, I have to learn QuickBooks, or I have to? No, you don't. That's why you get a bookkeeper.
Hmm. I hear something similar. If somebody will say to me, for instance, a prospective client, well, Jim, I understand what you do, and I have to do something. I have no choice at this point. And I stop, that person will never become a client. And my answer is you have a fantastic choice. And
Hmm.
that choice is doing what you're doing right now. Well, I can't go on doing it. I said, sure you can. You might not like the result. The result might be disastrous, but
Yeah.
that's still a choice. And if you're acting passively about that, you probably aren't going to fix it. And frankly, it's not a good use of my time.
Yeah. So tell us, Jim, what are some of the, recently some of the big results that some of your clients have had, that were really just amazing to them, or they started out here and you took them here. Just give everybody an idea of what working with you could result in.
Mm, the best way of describing it, Dr. Barnsley, is where they feel that they have a rock lifted from their shoulders. So
Mm,
they can do things that they've wanted to do and they can get more things implemented. It really is, in many regards, pain relief. And
mhm.
also, it's acceptance of things that, Jim, I'm never going to do that. And I say, and that's okay. Don't change yourself because that's a waste of time.
Mhm.
It's okay to say you're not going to do something, and you can ameliorate it by maybe small changes in behavior or bringing in another person, recognizing that this is not your strong suit. And sometimes a large measure of it is being called out and saying, you're doing X, you're fucking yourself right into the ground when you do it, but it's your ground. It's
Mhm.
you. Do what you want, but this is the result, and we're not going to lie about the result. And very often there will be a flip at that point, or as I refer to that as my come to Moses moment.
The
Um,
burning bush.
and what I'm also seeing a lot of, especially recently, are people genericize themselves.
Mm.
So that if how many places have you been? What do you do? Well, I am a financial services professional. Okay. I am a coach. I am, and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking to myself, this is not business networking. This is the village people of business. So
Mm.
instead of the construction worker and the toll taker and the cowboy, you have, these generic descriptions. The question is, are you going to give yourself the freedom to talk about what you're doing and really drilling down to that point? And when you drill down to a point of what you're really doing or a sub target market, you're probably going to kill it. And I'm seeing the greatest progress there. And it usually doesn't take that much time. And it's usually an oh my goodness moment. I'm going to assume one of the things you found over the years, as I did, the narrower I went, the more money I made.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The easier it was to describe what I do with entrepreneurs. And particularly, I work with a lot of financial advisors and attorneys who fit those descriptions, who are specialists. Now, there are other people I work with in all different businesses and industries, but I found the narrower I went in the description, the more business came in.
Interesting. Yes. Like a micro niche. Definitely.
Mhm,
Definitely. And I know for myself, just deciding that I really wanted to work with women
mhm,
who were big hearted and in the first few years of their business, I had people say, "Why are you just going to work with women?" Well, I do work with men, but not in my group coaching program. My group
mhm,
coaching program is only for women, and there are reasons for that. It is structured for the things that we as women deal with, and it's a particularly collaborative, cooperative environment that can be changed when there is that gender dynamic that enters. So it's for me, it's great. But I've had people try to dissuade me from that, Jim. And so I think it's really important to be true to who you really want to work with. And I usually say to my clients, your ideal client is a version of you. They are
mhm.
a version of you at some point in time. So I love working with educators. I love working with women in business. I love working with small business owners who start really basically with like very little money and they build it from there. Why? Because that's all a version of who I was. And that's who I'm
Mhm.
best able to help. So, what would you say to those people listening who are like, yeah, but I'm going to miss out on business if I micro niche, if I niche down, I'm going to miss out on business. What would you say to them?
I would say talk to anybody who is very successful and they will tell you about their niche or their specialty
Yeah,
within the profession. And if they talk long enough, they will tell you what that is. It
yeah,
could be, for instance, yes, I'm an accountant, but I do a lot of work with nonprofits.
mm-hmm,
I do a lot of work with nonprofits that are in turnaround, for instance. I might be an accountant, but I'm really great at working with people who have multiple but small collections of rental properties.
mm-hmm,
I might be an accountant who does, or a bookkeeper I met whose specialty is working with artists.
mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. Or, I'm a realtor who works with people who are recently divorced, helping them release their house and find new places to live. Yeah, and that doesn't mean we can't work with other people, but we just have an area that is going to spread basically word of mouth primarily. This is going to go,
Mhm.
you know.
It can be word of mouth, and also if you do promote yourself, you now have the luxury of focusing in on issues related to that niche. And I am assuming that you have had experiences when you talk to a prospective client, you've heard the words, oh my God, you get me.
Yes,
That means that they are ready and willing in most cases to become a client because they've been heard. You'll get me when you get to a point that's frankly narrow enough and focused enough so that people have the opportunity to see themselves in your experience and to
right.
see that they're being heard because somebody else can be empathetic to what they had gone through in their life.
And also you may hear, "Oh, you're asking all the right questions." And that's
Hmm.
something I heard recently. The person has not become my client yet, but she was like, "You're really asking all the right questions."
And,
And
and my first thing is, I'm glad to hear that. How important is it for you to have the right answers?
mhm, yes. And how important is what you say is important to you, period? How important is it really to you? I
Hmm.
actually have people tell me on a scale of 0 to 10 how important what they share is, why they would engage. So how about managing ourselves, Jim? Are we really just lousy managers over ourselves too?
We can be. And it goes back to the individual. It goes back to really, there comes a point, if when you are successful with this vortex of activity, very often the person feels exhausted, frustrated.
Mm.
Sometimes they hit a plateau. Sometimes there's huge tension with their family because of the time dedicated to the business versus
Yes.
that.
Oh, yeah.
And and the question about change is, what's the willingness to change?
Hmm.
What's the willingness to change behavior, to be more
Mhm.
organized? Are you at a point where you need somebody to follow you with the peach basket? Are you at the point where, for instance, most CEOs of major corporations have a number two person handling their schedule? And they're able to say, for the next 15 minutes, you're talking to person X. We'll knock on the door and let you know that it's 2 minutes before you have to end this conversation. That kind of structure is important. Some people get to a point where, or they make the investment where they have that initially, where
Mhm.
they're going to, or as soon as possible, where they're going to be able to have that skill set filled in for them.
And sometimes we can do it with automation. We can do it as entrepreneurs sometimes with automation. We can have that structure um, in automated ways. I'm thinking about software we use. I'm thinking about, there's a simple thing I do on my phone. I have 3 words that are really important to me on on my, my, sorry, on my alarms. And I just set alarms for things a few
Mm-hmm,
minutes before. And then I see my words. I just put them into my phone. So it's power, courage, and commitment. Those are my
mm-hmm,
3 words right now. They may be different in 6 months, but for right now, it's power, courage, and commitment. And so I'll just set this for 5 minutes before XYZ appointment. And that lets me know to wrap, you know.
mm-hmm.
So there are ways we can do it too as solopreneurs, or, I have work for me, but not full-time employees. And the VA will be part-time at this point. But, I have my team that is really essential. I have my legal advisor. I have my tax prep person. I have my coaches. I have my insurance person. I have my financial advisor. I have a whole team of people. I have my hair person,
Mm-hmm.
hairstylist. I have a whole team of people. I have my house cleaner. She's part of my team. So I have a whole team of people who help me. They're not full-time employees in the kind of business I do. And actually, that's a relief for me.
Well, a question, at what point would you have a full-time employee?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that would be probably the first one who would be a full-time employee would be the VA. That would probably be
Mm-hmm.
if I got to that point where I wanted that.
Well, the reason why I asked the question is, when you have a full-time employee, that person is saying, I am now dedicating my career to
To
you.
you.
Okay, so at what point are you willing to bear that responsibility? If it's a part-time person, not really. It's
Mhm.
not your career.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it just depends on what the structure of your business is. If somebody has a storefront, they've obviously got to have those employees.
Hmm.
Or if they own a franchise, they've got to have those employees. Or if they're licensing their products, they've got to have those employees. You know,
Hmm.
um, I'm a maverick. I'm a maverick, Jim. I like my solopreneurship. I really do. And
Hmm.
I think that's something that happens to some of us who are entrepreneurs. So I'm happy having my team. But yes, what would that be? And a lot of times, many people who are, say, speakers and coaches like us, um, one thing is that their spouse may become their employee. I've seen that a lot.
Lord help us.
I know, right? I know. I've seen that a lot, though, I can tell you. And usually, let's look at that. Who do we think really is it? It's usually the woman who becomes the employee. This also happens with all sorts of businesses, whether they be some kind of home-oriented business like pest control or whatever. The woman becomes like the admin person. No, I've got that maverick part of me. And you know what? I also always really enjoyed in academia those times of just thinking and writing and really sort of a monastic life in many ways. And I still have that part of myself, Jim, that really enjoys that, even though I'm an extrovert in some ways. I really like those moments of creation, creating
Well,
new
in
content.
almost every entrepreneur I have met has some part of them that is an artist, something that they
Yes.
create, some skunk
Yes.
work, something where they're going to take some of the neat ideas they've seen and play with it. You have to honor the art within you in order to be successful. And the key is, how do you balance that from everything else you need to do to grow the organization?
I love that. Okay, I want you to repeat it again. You have to honor the art within you and balance that with all the things you need to do to grow the organization, right?
Right. Or to run it
Very
at this point.
important
Yes,
point,
yes.
Paul. Because we usually in entrepreneurship, we come into it because we have some sort of passion, something we really enjoy that is artistic at some level. And artistic, it might be writing, it might be speaking, whatever it is, or interior design, whatever that thing is in your business. We have that artistic part of us that likes to create. And then there's all the drudge work, right? Daily operations, marketing, all of that. That we've got to do to move things, to move the needle forward. So we've got to balance those times of creation with all of the rest. That is very important. And
And
because we're juggling so many things, usually, Jim,
mhm,
which is that recipe for burnout you were talking about earlier, that vortex of activity, which maybe
mhm.
vortex almost gives it a structure, but it may be more like this, right? Blah, you know. Um, I've seen people do that with marketing, right? I believe in having just a few marketing methods that you truly love,
Mhm.
such as speaking, or such as having your own show, or such as writing a blog or a book or whatever it is. But we should have specific methods of marketing that we really, really love and not try to do the things we don't enjoy. And we should keep it simple. Simple. Just keep it simple.
And it boils down to a question: how much control do you need? How much are you willing to cede?
Mm. How much control do you need, and how much are you willing to cede? All right, tell us more about that. That's intriguing.
Okay, when you spring forth and protect yourself through your vortex of activity and
Hmm.
success, it is really a measure of, I have control over my fate because I am successful. Or at
Hmm.
least that's the basis of that, as opposed to having no control when you had a crisis when you were young.
Hmm.
So now
Yep.
that you have some control and agency, in
Yep.
order to grow, in order to function, in order to do other things you want to do, some of the things you do, you will not be able to control. Somebody else will have to run them or control them.
Hmm.
So, how much do I need? How much am I willing to cede to other
For
people?
others. Love
Um,
it.
there used to be a line that I would see. I don't know what the number would be today. I called it about a $2 million organization. Below $2 million, the owner could have their hand in everything. Beyond that point, it'd be literally impossible to do that, and they would have to cede control. And sometimes I've seen owners who can't. It's just
Yes.
not in them. So they create, my term is a bonsai business. Like a bonsai tree is perfect in every way, and it might be 300 years old, but it's never going to get bigger than this. And that's fine,
And that's okay.
because everything about it is manicured, fertilized, watered, and
Perfect.
perfectly.
It's
Okay,
perfect.
so and there's nothing wrong with having a bonsai business.
Oh, I love that. That's actually, that should be a title of an interview you do, Jim, or a blog or a book. There's nothing wrong with having a bonsai business. I think one of the things I'm really hearing and what you've shared today is how important it is for us to understand. First of all, do we really want to manage other people? you know, Number one, maybe we don't. We need somebody else. Or we want to have a kind of business that is a bonsai business where we can do it with just a team of contract employees.
Hmm.
But to be true to what we really care about, do you want to be in charge of a huge organization? Or do you want to be in charge of just a few employees? Or do you want to be a solopreneur with contract employees, with a team? What
Hmm.
is it you really want? So I would say to everybody watching, pop what you would want. Pop what you want? Maybe you're in a bonsai business and you want to run that huge organization, or maybe you're in the huge organization and you're like, I need the bonsai business. I'm burned out. I'm tired of this. I don't want to do it.
Hmm.
I've seen it go both ways. I've seen people who were here and they were like, nope, no more of that. I want to simplify. So I want y'all just to put up in the comments, what kind of business are you in? Are you in that solopreneurship? Are you in the bonsai business? Are you in the big organization that you're managing, or at least at the head of, the CEO of? Or are you wanting to move into another type of business? And I really believe that your lifestyle needs to be most important. What is the lifestyle you really want? What do you want to be able to do with your time, right? Because it ain't all business, is it, Jim?
The answer is there used to. I remember once a professor I had was asked, "What's on the final?" And his answer was everything. Everything is on the final in this case. Everything you have is something you can consider. Almost all of it is a choice, ultimately, about what you want to do. And it might be a good choice, it might not be a good choice, but they're your choices to take. As you've seen probably in your life, lots of people give you advice about what they think you should do. And the answer is the only right answer is what you want to do, as long as it's legal and as long, and sometimes within reason, and as long as really you're honoring yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to go through the unbelievable horseshit of doing your own thing, you better have things that come out of it that make sense to you, that satisfy your soul. And by the way, the art could be just looking for new, interesting businesses and playing with the ideas of, gee, how could I integrate this? How could I make this profitable? What would it look like? Everybody is a tinkerer as an entrepreneur. Some people just tinker with ideas and opportunities.
Yeah. Love that. We're always looking for that next thing. So, Jim, I want to thank you. You've given us lots of food for thought today. To really think about the kind of organization we want, to think about how we've been hiring that hasn't been productive, to think about the fact that we all have that choice. Ultimately, the choice is ours, and that's probably one of the major reasons we all became entrepreneurs, is so that we could decide. And so why it would be stupid to abdicate that, right? To just say, well, no, I don't really have a choice. That would be dumb, because you do if you're an entrepreneur. It is a choice. You always
Hmm.
do. You can leave the business if you want. You can start a different one, whatever. You could sell it. Um, so you've given us a lot to think about. If you had just one thing you could say to other business owners who may be feeling bold, or maybe they're not feeling bold right now, they're feeling more vulnerable, as you mentioned earlier, what is one thing that you would leave everybody with today?
Mm, I would start with the words honor yourself.
Hmm, I love that. Honor yourself. And that takes time to know, to listen,
Hmm.
to be in touch with yourself. So honor yourself and the way you want your life to look, the way you want your business to look. Well, Jim, I think you had something. Did you have a little gift you wanted to give everyone? Do you have a gift you want to give them?
Well, if you're in Philadelphia, ring me up for the best pastrami sandwich in the region.
I love it. And your website is
www.elsinoreba.com. That's ELSINOREBA.com. I encourage you not just to visit, but I encourage you to reach out to me. And the conversation that we will have is going to be a vastly different experience from, say, reading the same things on a website. And my description is when we were in high school, we all took sex ed, and eventually almost all of us had sex. And wasn't there a difference between those two things?
So true. All right, give us the website one more time.
www.elsinoreba.com.
All right, love it. And you will meet with people and talk with them about what you do. And everybody remember that you can also go to my website, spirited-solutions.com, spirited dash, put the dash or you get a boring computer company.com, and you can get your copy of How to Overcome Overwhelm in 7 Easy Steps, which is very useful for business owners, especially solopreneurs. We need this stuff. So, Jim, it's been great to have you. Everyone, please share, comment, share this with your tribe. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just go to Dr. Barnsley Brown and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can keep up with all the amazing interviews of bold, badass business owners. And remember, we'll be back next Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. So for now, thank you again, Jim. You all go out, make a difference, be bold, be badass, and never give up.